So I'm here today with senior environment artist, musicianist, and all-around art lover Freddie Lee. He is currently the principal level architect on Redfall, but he's worked on many projects in his career, which he's spent like 25 years in the industry, which is quite a long time. Projects such as Brütal Legend, Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, and Mafia III. So, Freddie, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are
Yeah.
you?
I'm good too. Um, a little bit nervous and a little bit excited, but you know.
No,
So start off, we'll get into your background a little bit because you actually have a little bit of an interesting background because you graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in architecture and started out as a draftsman. And then later, funny enough, started working for a company called Crystal Graphics, which is, not to be confused with Crystal Dynamics. They're a completely different company, from what I'm aware.
fair.
Um, so my question is, were you always passionate about video games, or did a career for video games sort of present itself to you, and did you like develop a passion because of it?
A little bit of both. I played, and I'm old school. I played the old Atari. I played that to death. Then I had a Commodore 4 back in the day, and then I stopped playing when I went to college. But when I came out, I got my degree, worked a little bit, and there was a economic recession. There was a crash, so I had no work,
Hmm.
and I. That was also around the time that T2 came out, and that just sort of blew our minds. So I was jobless, but then I signed up for a computer 3D class, and that was actually held by. Uh, they were using the Crystal Graphics 3D software, and it was taught by somebody there. And I just asked if they had any kind of a job for an artist or an architect or ex-architect, and they had testing a QA job, so I took it, and that's how I got into tech. And it took me about I was there for about 3 years. Took a bit of time to get into games. Games was still so nascent, so new. The games that we know now, back in the mid '90s. But I was able to take whatever experience I had using their 3D software and parlay that into doing 3D environment art at this small company back in '95, end of '95. It was right after the PS1 came out and Tomb Raider came out.
Hmm. So
And
how did you wind up working at Crystal Dynamics? Did they approach you? Did you approach them?
so that first game job that I had, the company was in trouble, and the head engineer was dating someone who worked at Crystal. So I was lucky to have gotten an interview there, and they liked me enough that they hired me. So it's just I was super lucky. And in those days, I always count my lucky stars. It's that I got it because it was still kind of Wild West of sorts, and different people from different backgrounds were able to get in. It's not quite that. It's not quite that way anymore. But there weren't schools or games or anything at the time. It was just whatever art portfolio I had. So that got me in and helped that I knew the head engineer and so got my foot in the door at Crystal. And that's when I got that I joined the Pandemonium 2 team when I joined the Crystal way back then.
Yeah, I noticed that was one of the games that you worked on, and you said you worked on a couple levels. Do you remember what levels you worked on for that game, by chance?
I'm, wow, so long ago.
Yeah, I figured as much.
I don't know if I know the names of them anymore. I know it by sight, but I know there was a. Let me think. There was one that you were platformed up inside a giant cylindrical gear. There was one that was really psychedelic. It was pinks and oranges, and I did some work on the final level. We all did.
And then after that, you started working on a little game called Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, right?
They were unbeknownst to any of us, whatever was going on politically or with getting that franchise from I forget the name of the company, but Amy was still pretty new at the time, Amy Hennig, and so I joined that team when they were just coming out pre-production, if I remember correctly. And that was intense, but it was a pretty to be on.
Yeah,
And
it's a pretty big project to be like one of your first ones that you work on in the industry, right?
we didn't know. We just thought it was another big project, but by the time we were shipping, we realized that we had something special, and it was pretty amazing
Yeah.
to be team, but to push the technical boundaries of a PS1, to do things like streaming and to do the morphing of the worlds. That was really pushing that PS1 console. Boy, we really pushed.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because Soul Reaver is probably still like one of the best looking games from the PS1, at least from what I've seen. It's like incredibly detailed.
I know that we were also starting to do what a lot, all companies do now, which studios do now, which is having more specialized work done by different people. 'Cause back then, most of the time, if you're an environment artist, you did models, you did textures, you did lighting. But with Soul Reaver, we started doing the separating out some of those tasks because it was a big game. There was a lot to do.
Yeah. And in particular, you worked on the Sunken Abbey, Raziel's
Yeah,
Temple, and Aluka Castle levels.
yeah, yeah. I did a lot of that, and I was able to sort of um, use some of my architecture history, help them do the layouts and sort of get some of the architecture right.
Yeah. Speaking of architecture, what architectural styles helped you influence your creations? For instance, in Raziel's territory, there's like some arches that are kind of reminiscent of ones from like you find in like the Lincoln Cathedral.
I was looking at the Sunken Abbey. I was looking at Notre Dame, France, um, and just going. Might as well go to the source, right?
Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, the other a couple other areas I was looking more at. We want areas that look different. So I was looking at more like 1930s, 1940s architecture.
Hmm.
There were more. Um, um, but yeah, we definitely drew on those historical designs and architecture to create those worlds.
So would would you say that any Gothic architecture had any influence on your design?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I would have guessed. That probably looked at a lot of Gothic architecture when making this type of game because it's a very sort of dark and gritty sort of game, and I
Yeah.
felt like Gothic architecture could pretty much encapsulate that world.
Oh yeah. Great. And we had the columns and the archways. We created really cool silhouettes, and we can exaggerate those shapes.
So while creating these levels, did you invent any personal lore or inner narratives? For example, did you like try to imagine the day to day of these places, or like how the nature worship worked in the Abbey?
Not too much. It was a pretty mad dash. There was some talk of that. It was more like me talking to Amy or chatting with Amy about what her ideas of for the area, how what she wanted conveyed, and I just went for it, but nothing that specific. I remember everything was really rushed.
Yeah, and even then, the game didn't make its initial release date. It was pushed back just a little bit, but I mean, it
Mhm.
still came out good in the end.
Yeah, yeah,
You're pretty much just like going off of what somebody else is telling you for these levels, right? And like putting
yeah.
your own spin on it.
I threw architecturally. I put some of my own spin on it. Some they liked, some they didn't. But in terms of something specific to narrative, it was mainly me talking to Amy and just working from that.
Oh, by the way, is there an official name for Raziel's area? Because it's only referred to as Raziel's clan territory in the script, and the Elder Gods refer to it as like a stronghold. And there's like, several instances where it's like called something different all the time.
I I honestly can't remember. It's been a while.
That's fine. I guess we'll just stick to Raziel's clan territory then for
I
that
think
level.
there is a name. I just can't recall what it is right now.
Shoot. Oh well. And were there any details or areas in these levels that you had to cut back on due to hardware limitations?
I recall a lot of it was footprint reduction. We added a lot of corridors for the streaming. So I don't know if you remember, there were a lot of corridors and doorways and things you had to go through. Um, yeah, a lot. Things were cut. I don't recall what they were. They might have been at different levels. The core play area were always kept. I remember working on the boat, and I think there was a series of tunnels that we ended up shortening because it was just too much. We had to consider how the different levels before and after was streamed. We had to be careful with the sunken ab because that was a huge, pretty open level with water that at the time with the PS1 it was tricky to get the sorting working with water and transparency because it was expensive. The PS1.
Yeah, it probably took up a considerable chunk of memory too, just having water in the level, didn't it?
Yeah, and there's swimming and everything.
Yeah, it's
So
kind of
that
interesting you mentioned tunnels and the ship and stuff because I remember looking at like alpha build sort of stuff on that level, and there was like some tunnels and stuff that were cut, and the boat used to like move back and forth, but in the final game it's just stationary.
yeah, it created too many bugs with moving collision and tracking the collision. At least on the PS1. I mean, some games even now can't do it. It's a tricky technical technical thing to get it to work. To track collision on something that's also moving.
Hmm. Now I know I have a few more Soul Reaver questions. I just have to because I actually sourced these from like the fan community because like honestly I still haven't gotten around to playing Soul Reaver, so I figured a better way would be like to ask fans what they'd like to know about the
Hmm.
games. So
Yeah, yeah. I worked with some really amazing artists. I think as an artist, I grew working on that team. There were some really cool people I worked with on that team. They're all spread out now in the industry.
yeah, you still keep in touch with them, or is it a bit hard?
Uh, just a couple of them. One of them left the industry. One of them is sort of in the industry in a different branch. One of them, a couple of them are still in the industry. I haven't talked to them in a while. We would try to catch up here and there during GDC. But yeah, we're all a lot of us have families. It's it's hard to get together, especially if we're not in the same living in the same city.
So did you? So you only did the? I'm guessing you only built out the levels. You didn't do any like puzzles or boss fights or anything within the levels, or did you?
I laid out. Did I do the boss fight? I did. I don't remember now, but I know I did the level layout and I helped work on some puzzles. But most of the time it was giving design some art and having them play with the area and create a lot of the block puzzles, and then trying to figure out what those blocks are. They're not just boxes, and how to do how to set up puzzles, open doors, locking doors, gating devices. We had to figure out also when you go into the when the world, I forget what it's called now, when you morph the world, how that's going to affect gameplay. We want to do more situations where when you go into that world, it'll take you up to different levels that open up pathways. We did some of that, but not as much as we wanted to.
So I know there was supposed to be a lot more elemental reavers or like elemental powers within the game, but they wound up getting cut due to the you know, development time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you happen to remember like what these like puzzles or what these abilities would have been like?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't. I am probably the wrong person to ask for that. Someone closer to Amy would be the person to ask.
All right, this is worth a shot. Just one of the many questions I had.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry, I do not remember some of that stuff anymore.
I guess one more interesting question to ask about this game. So, do the stained glass windows in Rahab's boss fight have any significance? Like, do they have any meaning, or are they just?
Well, I think I recall they had the sigils on there.
Yeah, the games like the in-game sigils, like
Yeah,
lore base.
yeah. And I think they were, at least in that rotunda, they were, you were supposed to match this, if I remember, the sunbeam to the top of a column to unlock a puzzle.
Hmm.
Um, Anywhere else, I don't recall they were used for anything else, but more set dressing. I think there were sigils or something used for the stained glass, but at least in the area that I worked on, it was specific to solving a puzzle.
And are the murals on the walls of Drowned Abbey, do they pick the sun and moon cycle?
Gosh, I don't remember. I think
You'd probably have to look at it again, wouldn't you?
yeah, I have to go in there and look around to jog my memory.
That's fair. I just thought I'd ask anyways.
Of course.
We already talked about Pandemonium too, but another game you worked on that I actually got a copy of recently. If I can get it out. I got a whole collection of them. I guess I could just show the box of it, but whatever. But you worked on this game too, didn't you? The Walt Disney World cart.
Uh, yeah, I moved on to that right after finishing Soul Reaver. I worked on the Autopia level.
Wait, which level?
Autopia, the this futuristic one with it had the what is that, Space Mountain in the background.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't played that one yet, but that was gonna be my question. Was like, what levels did you work on? So
That was one, and Glenn Schofield was the art director. He's the head of Striking Distance now. He worked on he was the art director at the time, and he did the lighting, and he helped me with the tracks, and he helped me with some of the textures.
how did I don't know if you'd be the one to answer this question. Just thought of it now, but how did that deal even come about with Disney and Crystal to make this game?
No idea. Far. We were surprised that even happened. I think it was. I'm trying to think. Is if were we part of IDOS at that time? It might have been something like
Yeah,
that. So it might have been involving IDOS and Crystal and Disney. And even then, we had second and third tier characters. We weren't allowed to use Mickey or any of the main characters at all.
yeah.
And I remember doing some work on, might have been a loading screen for one of the cars, modeling it and doing some touch up work in Photoshop. But mainly, I did the Autopia level.
Okay.
That was a very quick project.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Yeah,
Probably like less than a year development time, right?
yeah, it was. It was pretty fast.
Yeah, one interesting fact I do know about it is that it actually shares a couple tracks with the Gex games. Like the dinosaur track reuses a track from Prehistory Channel and Gex Enter the Gecko, and the Blizzard Beach level has like a different rendition of the holiday broadcasting theme in it, which is really interesting.
Yeah, because most of the team worked on Gex.
Yeah,
That's little Easter eggs.
yeah. Except you, right? You didn't work on Gex at all, right?
Yeah. I was
Yeah,
on Soul.
yeah. That's what I figured.
Yeah,
So you're like one of the odd people out.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so in 2000, you left Crystal Dynamics to work at Z-Axis on the Dave Mirra games, but later you rejoined Crystal Dynamics. Um,
Yeah.
so why did you leave Crystal to join Z-Axis only to later rejoin Crystal later?
Oh, a friend of mine enticed me to check them out, and they were a small, little, scrappy little company, and they seemed really fun. It was a different type of game, pretty cool technology, and just I just needed a change too. I think there was a lot of stress with Soul Reaver that I just needed to get away. It was a fun game, but it was also stressful. So, and it was a little career jump too, as I became a senior environment artist going there. So that was really enticing. A little bit better pay as well, and pretty interesting game to work on. Very different type of game.
Yeah, very Tony Hawk-esque type of game.
They were, the big selling point too was they were they were really close to where I was living too. So I would have had a really short commute time.
Wow, that is very convenient then.
Yeah, it was convenient. So that was cool. Got to learn about BMX and learn that culture and kind of deep dive in that culture. It was pretty cool.
So you worked on I believe it's Airport Garage and Devil Peak
Yeah,
levels, right?
yeah.
Do you remember like any interesting like Easter eggs or behind the scenes stuff when creating those levels?
It was no. It was again like anything. It was you have this much time to do it. So I just had to whip something out. I mean, it was just really a lot of research of those type environments, and they're trying to figure out how to make a rocky terrain like that to have a play smoothly with a BMX bike, or how to take the architecture of the airport and the elements of the structure and make that fun and playable with a BMX bike and doing all the stunts and tricks.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of iterating and building and moving things around, making sure everything flowed.
Yeah, I think it turned out pretty good in the end.
Cool, thanks.
Why did you end up going back to Crystal then? Especially since this other company was, a lot more conveniently located.
So Glenn called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, we're going to do X4." I'm like, "Ooh, that's really interesting. We're gonna make you give you a little more money and you can have more responsibilities." And there was and all my friends there were like, "Come on back, it's gonna be really cool." So I, I decided to go back.
It's so funny you mentioned that because, to be honest with you, that's like the one question that made me really want to do this interview was about Gex 4. So
Hmm.
since you brought it up, I know you did the concept art for it, that you have like few pieces from your online portfolio.
Hmm.
So my question to you is, how far did it make it into development, and why was it eventually canceled?
It didn't go very far. I think there were a lot of, again, above my pay grade from what I recall and what I understand. It was ultimately something that IDOS didn't want to do.
Hmm.
Reason, and they had a different IP, the original IP they wanted to push, which turned into Whiplash.
Ah, so it was Eidos that kind of pushed forward Whiplash. It wasn't just the development team.
I think it was both at the time. There was some big turnovers at the time. That was the time when EA courted Glenn and half the team left at the same time. They eventually, I think they
Eesh.
went. I think they all went to work on Lord of the Rings at EA, and that's how that was the beginnings of Visceral before it was Visceral. Um, so a lot, and half of us stuck around, and the game that we were working on, turned into Whiplash.
So then Yex4 never made it past like the pre-production stages, pretty much, right?
Oh yeah, they changed up. If I recall correctly, they changed it up pretty early, which was fine. I mean that just gave us time to course correct.
Hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I had guessed. That like it didn't really make it past like those pieces of concept art and stuff. Um, and that Eidos like it was canceled pretty much because Eidos wasn't interested in making a new Gex game.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's it's a little reassuring, I guess, to have it confirmed that I was right to some extent. So, I mean, to that extent, would you? I don't know if you'd be able to answer this necessarily, but would you say that because some Gex fans have like theories that like because of the style of gameplay, humor, the art style, that on some level, Whiplash is a bit of a spiritual successor to Gex. Would you
Yeah.
agree with
No.
that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Totally. It was sort of taking some of the ideas from Gex and porting it over to Whiplash. And some of the designers, creatives from Gex, moved on to Whiplash for sure. That's what happened.
Yeah, that's another reason too. That a lot of people that worked on Gex also worked on that game.
Right. A lot of people. also went to EA. So it was a weird split, but that kind of stuff happens.
I actually knew about Whiplash back in the day. 'Cause my
You,
friend had it, and I
I'm
can't
impressed.
remember if I played it at all, but I know he played it, and it's just a really interesting concept for a game. Just the whole setting and the mechanics behind it and stuff.
I remember we got good words from PETA
Oh, yeah, they probably weren't too pleased about it.
because our game was about rescuing caged animals and letting them go free.
Oh, okay, so they were pretty like
They were
positive
actually
towards it.
they were very positive about it.
I thought they'd be pretty mad because you had like one animal abusing the other animal pretty much for like
Yeah, I thought so too. But we were like, hey, they actually liked the idea, and they were kind of commending us for doing that. So that's okay, sure.
you'll take that compliment, right?
Yeah.
I guess spinning from game development to something else. Something a lot of people might not know about you is that you're a guitarist for a band called Sofajunkie,
Mm-hmm.
which, and you're actually one of the integral members of it, founding it with your friend David Redger. So,
Ruger. Yeah, David Ruger.
Ruger, my bad.
Met him in college, so I know him for a long time. I know him longer than my time in games.
Yeah. So, did you two always set out to make a band, or did it just kind of happen? Or what's the story
Uh,
behind that?
with him, with him and his friend in college, and then we did our own thing. And then he wanted to do his own thing, his own band, so I joined him because I wasn't playing with anyone, and that was back in 98, 99, I think, maybe 2000. And so yeah, we were playing. We played out some clubs here and there. We still meet up as much as we can, just not as much as we used to. We did meet up a couple evenings ago. That was kind of fun, but it was a month before that since we last met. We're just too busy.
Yeah.
Haven't
Well,
played out 4 or 5 years, but
mm,
with COVID didn't help. But we'll see. We'll figure something out.
yeah, I was gonna say the pandemic probably hasn't helped with you all getting together and playing.
It's funny because recently we've been so busy and not met up so much that it didn't feel that different. but but yeah, we've been playing for a long time. We have hours, hundreds of hours of jam sessions that he has the tapes to and that he hasn't had time to go through.
Mm,
But it's something that's a fun. It's sort of like a friend of mine said. That's like once your hobby is a job, you need another hobby for your hobby job. So this is kind of like the hobby for the hobby job.
yeah, I mean it's a pretty cool hobby, and you seem pretty good at it. I've seen a couple videos of you shredding on the guitar and stuff. So
I don't practice enough. I need to practice more.
don't we all?
You
um,
play?
no, well, I used to be in band in like middle school actually. Like I played percussion, drums, that sort of stuff. But
Nice.
yeah, sadly I haven't really played in like many years. But I still pretty much like love music, and like it's still pretty a good sense of rhythm and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Just keep that. It's been a nice outlet.
yeah, very nice creative outlet probably.
Hmm.
So another question is when's the next album gonna be? Because at least according to like Spotify, it's been like 10 years or more since your band's
Yeah.
put out an album.
We actually have a lot for 2 albums. We just haven't been able to actually find time. We actually did a recording session some 10 years ago. That's basically rhythm tracks that we haven't finished. But yeah, actually, Dave was just saying we actually re-listened to those sessions, and he says that we need to re-record everything because since then we had time to play those songs, and it's way more. The way we play them now, it's much more fun, much more relaxed. It's a better groove than when we played them back then because it was still new. So we haven't we didn't get the feel of it at the time. We just kind of rushed it to get it recorded. We just weren't ready at the time. So yeah, we have enough for like 2 albums.
Maybe we'll get a double drop pretty soon then.
Oh, no, it's gonna.
But yeah, that's it's kind of interesting you mentioned that because I was listening to like the previous album that you released, and it did sound a little bit underground, kind of punkish, that sort of
Mhm.
stuff. So I guess that kind of matches up. But
Yeah,
yeah, I need more songs like "What Was My Cock" and "Corporate Porn" and
yeah.
stupid songs like that.
Oh, those. Oh, yeah. Those are the barely safe. They're not safe for work at all. But
No.
those essentially, it was just something that Dave wanted to put out that he thought was funny. We got a lot of those.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a sucker for songs with like funny titles or like funny choruses or whatever. So that's kind of up my alley, to be honest.
Cool. And a lot of those we just make them up on the spot. It's just whatever's coming out of his head. He just sings it.
uh, another interesting fact about the band is I don't know if you've noticed in like recent years, but the old website for it is still up, like the one from like 2005.
Yeah, yeah. Dave about that. He's the guy running it, or if he even has time to do anything with it. Yeah, it says that's still it's still up.
Yeah,
He-
and it still looks like it's straight from 2000. It's
right.
such a time capsule of a website.
Oh, totally. It's almost 20. I should talk to him about that. It's like 20 years old. It's practically 20 years old.
Maybe it's time to update it.
Yeah, yeah. We should.
But yeah, since we're on the topic of music, I know you're a fellow music lover yourself. What's some of your favorite songs or bands or genres?
It changes a lot, but I tend to listen to hard rock, classic rock, grunge. It's just the music I grew up with, and like new wave, new wave music, some stuff from the '80s, some hair metal because they're just silly and fun. But yeah, and then grunge and some of the classic stuff from the '70s, '60s, and '70s. And then I would like once in a while veer to like I like chill hop, I like post rock. Then I'll like jump to like bebop jazz or chamber orchestra. I jump around a lot. Depends on my mood.
I like most genres too, like pretty much everything.
Hmm.
So, my taste is pretty varied. You know,
Cool.
got rock, hip hop, even country and other stuff like that.
Yeah, cool. Like yesterday morning, I was listening to Gojira just because I needed something heavy.
Need to get pumped, ready for the day.
Yeah, Thursday morning. Yeah.
Thursday morning stuff for you.
No, it was just yesterday. There was a lot going on.
Okay.
Just need to jump in.
So in 2007, you started an online blog called Dragging Lead on Parchment.
Oh,
Uh,
gee.
you
Gosh.
bringing back memories, am I?
Yeah, I just basically forgot it.
Yeah, I
I
was
think
gonna ask like what convinced you to make one and then later abandon it.
I I'm trying to think if it was around the time I joined Double Fine.
Yeah, it is.
Uh, and, and it was inspiring to see all the different artists working there. And I was trying to force myself to do some personal art, but obviously didn't get too far. And Brütal Legend took pretty much all my time for that year. So that was it was cool. It was cool, working with these amazing artists, like true artists, like painters and sculptors, and illustrators. They're really cool people.
Yeah, but eventually you just got too busy to keep up the blog, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
I
figured.
think a couple times, and then I think I've since forgotten it.
Yeah, you'd post like once and then like come back a year later, like post something else, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I don't think anyone was. I mean, aside from you looking at it now, I don't think anyone's looking at it.
No, not really. I mean, there's a few interesting sketches from like Brütal Legend, just like and you showed the process of how you like made a blimp for stacking
Hmm.
and things of that nature, but yeah, there's not that much else to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how. Yeah, it's. I think people are not even going there anymore.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
Using
mean,
that.
you got things like Twitter and I guess Instagram. You could share
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
You don't really need blogs so much anymore.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know how people do that anymore. They do it. Yeah, they do it on Instagram or Twitter or people put. A lot of us put stuff on ArtStation.
So yeah, when you were at Double Fine, you worked on Brutal Legend. So
Hmm.
what was that like?
Oh, I was on the last year of development. So it was someone they needed. They needed someone to help finish the game, and uh, they put me on the last two levels: the Path to Sea of Black Tears and the Sea of Black Tears. So it was just taking, in some ways, taking some stuff I did on Soul Reaver, but much more stylized and really corrupting the shapes, making kits and putting them into the environment, the layout, sculpting the roads and doing some lighting, whatnot, giving that try to help achieve that icky, oily look. And the
So
interior was a combination of a couple people as well working with me to get that interior stadium boss fight arena.
hmm. So was it like a case just like Soul Reaver where you basically going off of other people's ideas, or were you doing your own
Yeah,
thing?
yeah. My art director was also my friend. He had a very strong vision, and he was working with the head of the concept guy, so it was very clear what they wanted, and so it was just figuring out how to take the 2D drawings and making them into 3D assets.
Well, I guess you only caught the tail end of it, but it seemed like a pretty fun, or at the very least interesting game to work on. Just the whole art style and vibe of it, just like a
Yeah,
heavy metal album come to life.
that was fun. That was really fun to be able to like listen to the soundtrack, and it's all some really cool classic metal that I grew up with, and Tim and I are about the same age, so it's cool to hear those things and sort of like listen to that music and jam with it and work on something related to that. I never got to meet like
Jack
Ozzy or
Black.
that. No, I could have met Jack Black in one of the concerts, but I think it was too late. I had to go home.
uh,
Uh, but yeah, it was kind of cool. Tim met Rob Halford and Dio, all those guys.
wow.
Yeah, they were in LA doing the recordings of the voice for the voice acting. It was very cool.
Yeah, it's crazy because I think Dio passed away like not too long after that. That's
I think
man.
the 17, something like that. Yeah, he passed away a few years after. And yeah, I remember seeing him maybe a year or two before he passed, and I had no idea he was sick.
Mm.
He just he just rocked out,
Live
sang out. Yeah,
live life to the fullest.
yeah,
I know you also worked on projects such as Stalking Autonomous, and I believe you helped prototype Headlander, right?
yeah. I did.
But my question to you is, what's it like working with Lee Petty?
Oh, it's awesome. Just because he's kind of an amazing guy. He's got a very clear artistic vision. He's a good artist, but he's also really good at organizing, running a team. He's very clear. He communicates really clearly with what he's looking for, and he's also flexible enough to take on like new ideas if he sees it and be like, "Oh, this is cool." Um, but yeah, it's like you have confidence in your work because you can trust that he knows what he's doing. So then you can focus on your own work and your things that you can how you can contribute to the ideas into the game.
Yeah, but when I was looking through your blog, I noticed like how many sketches you had of him, and I figured you two were pretty like good buddies, so I felt like I had to
Yeah,
ask that question.
yeah. He's the worst ones of me and some of our other coworkers.
So Speaking of autonomous, I don't think we got to hear your side of the story during the Amnesia Fortnite 2012 videos.
Gosh,
So, what was it like working on the prototype, and what was the most fun or interesting aspect about it?
it was kind of it was procedural, but it was just trying to come up with shapes that would work when whatever the engine will put together, throw into the scene. It wasn't. I'm trying to think what happened. It was like it was a very short prototype time, and I remember getting some sketches from Lee and just building them out, and then I would extrapolate and model out different shapes based on one of his two of his sketches, and then we would play it, see what happens.
Yeah, it's very sort of 80s vaporwave looking
Yeah,
kind of game, and
yeah,
it was about like putting robots together to like
hmm
solve puzzles or fight enemies, right?
yeah. Like I don't know if you played Rad, but Rad's definitely an extension of that of autonomous for sure. It's that same vibe and same sort of the same art direction, similar art direction.
Okay, so Rad does kind of live. I mean, Autonomous does kind of live on in Rad. That's
Yeah, totally.
interesting. Yeah, it's another game I have that I got to get around to.
Yeah, generating games, so the level's different every time.
So, what did you contribute towards the Headlander prototype?
Um, I worked on the hookah lounge. I actually built the lamp, the chairs. I think I built some of the hookahs. I built the rooms. I worked with Lee figuring out the sort of that late '60s vibe, that sci-fi vibe from that time period. Um, and actually, I modeled that room. I modeled some of the corridors, the bubble corridors. I did some work on the spaceships. um, I think I modeled a bunch of the rooms too, for the prototype, not for the game.
Hmm.
Partly, again, just from sketches that he did, I was able to just build something really quickly.
So, throughout your career, you've worked on a variety of games, some larger
Hmm
in scope than others, but probably not quite as to the extent of Mafia 3. So, what was it like making the Frisco Fields district in Mafia 3?
A lot of long hours. It was that thing was huge when I first joined them, and they actually cut it back. I kept asking them to cut it back, and they eventually did cut it back, but I don't think they cut it back enough. But what can you do? It's there used to be. I have to be careful what I say because 2K is very litigious about this
True.
stuff. I will say that we had to cut it back. It helped gameplay, but it was just in terms of scheduling, it was obvious it was too big. Um, I ended up hand sculpting a lot of the terrain, which is very time consuming, but I was able to get it done, and partly because because they cut it, they made it a little bit smaller. Um, but I had two other artists help me within Frisco Fields. There is a residential district that I needed two artists to help me with because I was too busy doing a different part of Frisco. And there was a lot of just physical sculpting, placement of objects, assets, building a lot of the props, building a lot of the smaller structures. So yeah, we did almost everything except for lighting
Hmm.
and textures.
So, did you look at like real like pictures from because I know the city's based on Louisiana or New Orleans.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you look at like old pictures of the buildings and like draw inspiration from that?
yeah. I know the team had been working on that game for already like 4 or 5 years when I joined them. So they actually all went to New Orleans years ago. There are tons of pictures that I was able to dig up on the network drive. So then, it was even when I was working on physical fields, I was just looking at Google satellite maps and just sort of see what those areas might look like or feel like. But then you have to sort of project backwards and think what it would look like in the '60s.
Yeah.
A lot of things haven't changed, so it wasn't too hard in that sense. Excuse me. There are little things like curbs and details of houses. Like we had to be very mindful how we build our house assets. They had to look real. They had to look like they were realistically constructed. You can't just shove things into one to another. They have to sort of sit. Each wood piece beam had to sit on top of each other in the realistic way, in a way that would have been built back in the '60s. There's a lot of time was spent just researching that kind of stuff.
I'm sure that was another like obstacle for you with this one because, I mean, this is pretty much like the first realistic sort of game you had to make. I mean, at least with the like current hardware and stuff that we had, like stuff like I guess Daredreamer is kind of realistic for the time, but
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
like you could really put in the details of like real life.
yeah, yeah. So the setup was that we would do a lot of that initial modeling, and the sister studio in Brno in Czechoslovakia did the finishing work. So it was sort of a two-pronged attack of getting the work done.
Well, I think it turned out pretty great in the end because I heard that like Frisco Fields is like probably the most diverse and unique of the districts in the game.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, got it's got it's got like the residential district. It's got this slummy area. It's got this somewhat industrial area. It's got a lot of little pockets, which is cool, and sort of like a foresty dirt road part of it, and a part of it faces the water. So there's a lot of different elements. It was actually pretty fun to do those elements.
but that's not all you did for this game. In addition to working on the main game, you also did two of the DLCs.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
what was it like working on each DLC?
By that time, we were really familiar with the process and the tools and the engine, and we had shipped the game, so the engine was relatively stable. So it was a much it was more it was actually even more fun because we were able to actually do stuff we weren't able to do for the main game because everything worked and we had already had the assets made, so we were able to put together levels really quickly with the designers and make things work really quickly. So it was a lot smoother process. It was more fun.
So which one? This might be hard to say, but which one was your favorite to work on of the two DLCs?
Um, so the first one was more fun. The DLC 3, I did more artwork for it. So that was actually kind of cool. So I don't know how to choose that one.
They're both fun. So
Yeah, for different reasons.
okay.
For the DLC one, the level architecting work was fun because it was just taking existing assets and putting it together and making new things out of existing assets. And the third one was making essentially a new club that didn't exist before, making that work, and that was kind of cool.
Did
Even
you?
that had to go back because it was big originally.
So was it like based on a location that was already in the game, or was it like added in?
It was, I think it was inside. There was an exterior made for it. There was a space made for it. Like they knew there was going to be a DLC there. So there was just in the game. I think originally it was just a shell, but then once you have the DLC, you unlock it. You can go inside.
Okay. Yeah, I figured it was something like that. Some sort
Yeah,
of forward-thinking DLC
yeah,
that they incorporate into the world. I kind of like it when games do that because it makes the world like more realistic and like DLC and stuff doesn't feel as tacked on, you know?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, studios are better about that nowadays too. Since we did Mafia 3, I mean they are much more cognizant of planning that stuff out.
So one question I forgot to ask earlier, actually two. Now that I look at it, got a little bit distracted talking about Gex 4, but you worked on a game called Snowblind, right?
Yeah,
Do you remember what levels you modeled for that? Because I know you did single player and multiplayer levels.
it was it was downtown. I think it was downtown. there were two parts of downtown that led into a tunnel and a little bit on the other side. And I think I worked on, geez, I remember touching 2 or 3 different levels out, in different areas, but I mainly worked on the downtown level and um, working on the buildings, interior, exterior, trying to do, create cover spots. And that tunnel, I remember that tunnel was a lot of work. There was some streaming involved. And then working on the buildings immediately outside the tunnel and set dressing the interiors, set dressing the tunnel, trying to figure out how to block things. I remember trying to figure out what type of neon signage we would need to use and how much we can use because of memory limitations.
And then the other question, which I don't know if you're at liberty to say, but I've noticed on your LinkedIn there was a mention of a unannounced PS3 project. Is that all related to the unshipped project section of your online portfolio?
Yeah, yeah. It was at a time when it was. I mean, I can't say too much because,
Okay.
um, looking back at it, we were pushing way too much. It would have been. Let's just say it would have been difficult to do it now, let alone back then. For what we were trying to do, too overly ambitious.
So you're
It was a
not
cool. It was like a lot of people were from the Snowblind team. It was really cool. It was cool to sort of extend that team camaraderie and expand on it and um, create something new, but it didn't work out.
hmm. So you're not at liberty to say what all that project was at all?
I don't think I should.
All right. That's fair. So, in terms of your artistic and technological abilities, you seem to always be pushing yourself to improve and do more, do better.
Hmm.
Is this something you just do like professionally for your career, or is this something that you apply to your personal life as well?
That's both. I mean, it's mainly for myself personally, but it bleeds into my profession. So whatever I can learn to better myself, I can apply to my work. It's always important to sort of keep learning, keep my eyes open to learn new software, to look at different artists, look at their techniques, um, look at their process, how they make art. I'm always learning.
Yeah, it's always good to uh, improve yourself
Hmm.
mentally and physically.
Yeah.
So do you remember any funny or interesting developer stories from some of the games you've worked on?
Yeah, but I don't want to put them on record. I can tell it to you.
Okay. Did it get somebody in trouble or
Yeah, probably.
okay. Okay. That's fair. And which projects were like some of the most fun for you to work on personally?
Um,
Or were they all just fun?
they're all fun, but I would say Project Snowblind was really fun because it was one of the smoothest project that I was part of. Um, basically, the projects I've worked under League have been really amazing. So Snowblind was one of them. Um, Stacking was really cool. I had a really good time working on stacking because I he just gave me and then the artist ownership of the levels. Um, Headlander would have been fun had I stayed, I think.
Yeah, Headlander looks like a pretty fun, interesting game. Just the whole
Yeah.
concept behind it. And and,
Again,
and the art style.
yeah, it's autonomous has some of that feel to it, that old school sci-fi design aesthetic.
Yeah. So that's interesting that Project Snowblind was like one of your fun ones. Just because it wasn't so rushed. You probably didn't feel as stressed out to do stuff.
They kept a lot of the stress from us because it was initially going to be a Deus Ex game, and they
Hmm.
changed it. So they were able to keep the stress from us, and we were able to stay focused. And they scheduled it enough that we didn't crunch very much, if at all.
Yeah, that's good. That's real good.
Yeah, so that was good.
So this might be a very silly question to ask you, but my curiosity would kill me if I didn't ask this. In the late '80s, did you star as an extra in a film called Daredreamer?
Nope, not me.
Okay,
Wasn't.
I thought so, but um, I was looking at the film and I saw like so it looked like somebody of Asian descent, like they riding the guitar. I didn't know if that was you or not. I couldn't get a clear look.
Nope.
I didn't think so, but it was worth asking. So yeah, I guess that's just the case of IMDb getting it wrong.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, but I mean, still, I imagine you probably haven't seen or heard of that movie, have you?
No, actually, I haven't.
It's a really interesting movie, man. I watched it just to like prepare for this, like just to try to see if like you were in it or not. But I just wound up watching it because it's such a movie.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, you can watch
I
it free on YouTube.
okay.
It's it's basically just like a fever dream of a movie is what I'd call it. Because I mean the whole concept is pretty much just like um it's different daydreams kind of connected throughout it. It's basically
Okay.
each daydream is just basically like a movie video sequence, and it's kind of bizarre. And I think like one website put it, which probably seems very accurate because I don't know if I'd say it's a so bad it's good sort of movie, but it's a very flawed good movie. You know,
Okay.
it's
Okay.
it's just an enjoyable thing.
Cool. Cool. Right. I'll check it out. I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, it, it's a very '80s movie for sure.
Right. There were some really crazy movies coming out in the mid to late '80s and early '90s that started, that led on that predated Tarantino. It was just everything leading up to that. There was some really crazy indie stuff bubbling up in the late '80s.
Yeah. Uh, But yeah, that was a really interesting thing I discovered when just looking up stuff about you to prepare for this, and I'm kind of glad I found it actually.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. Right on.
But are you looking it up or?
Yeah, 1989. Yeah, yeah, I'm looking it up. Wow.
Yeah, it's a very obscure movie. Like there's barely any information and stuff on it. Like the full movie just got uploaded to YouTube like very recently.
Wow. Wow, it's so weird. Some people have seen it.
I mean, I'm one of those few people. But like, I mean, the most popular video about this movie literally has like 10,000 views, and that's like over the course of almost like 15 years or something. So that's just how obscure this thing is, man.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll find time to check it out. Thank you.
Yeah,
But it was not me.
yeah, I figured, but I thought I'd ask anyways, just to be
Or
sure.
totally.
um, but yeah, since we're on topic of films, I know you're a pretty big film buff yourself. What's
Hmm.
like some of your favorite movies?
Oh, that's a difficult question. It's kind of like my musical genres. There's different ones for different moods, but there's always the usual suspects of Alien and Blade Runner and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and a lot of the movies that I saw when I was growing up for sure.
Star
The
Wars?
spot, the sweet spot around 1981, 1982, some good stuff, then some good ones to mid to late 80s. I just rewatched RoboCop, which is so cool. Still holds up really well. I checked out, um, but yeah, like recently I saw Everything Everywhere. I love that film. That's such an amazing film.
Yeah.
I love The Northman as well. But I am a fan of Eggers as well. That's my bias.
Yeah, I remember looking at your Twitter at one point. I think you saw a movie called Murder Party recently, right?
I think I did. Did I see that? I'm trying to remember.
It's about a guy that uh goes to this party, but the party is they like all want to kill him basically.
Yes, yes, it
Yeah,
was Sonye's first film. It was pretty interesting.
yeah,
The guy who room. Yeah, this was like his first film. It's a pretty interesting movie.
yeah,
It's kind of funny but kind of crazy.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was a movie I heard about like a few years back and always wanted to watch it, but couldn't find anywhere to like watch it. And finally, I found a way to watch it, and it was pretty interesting. It wasn't quite what I expected. I I guess thinking back to what I was expecting to be, is sort of more like the main character. He like fights or outwits them to like get out of like them killing him, but and without giving too much away for like anybody who hasn't seen it, the movie. But it's just like he gets out of it in like very, I guess, sort of realistic way to his character. The other characters kind of things happen to him.
Yeah,
But I mean,
totally.
it's still a good movie. I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fun. I had a blast watching it.
Well, I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, we've been going for about an hour now, I believe. So, um,
Yeah.
unless you have anything else you want to share or talk about, I mean, we could wrap it up here.
No, I need to wrap up some work and then call it a day.
Yeah, I don't want to keep you from your work. It's very important.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, thank you for this. It was actually really fun. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for doing this with me. Because believe it or not, I mean, one of the reasons why I was a little nervous is because I've never really done a video interview thing like this before. So, you know, not really sure how it'd turn out. But
I
I,
mean, that's fine. You just keep doing more and more. You'll get more experience. But you're doing fine.
yeah,
You're
that's
definitely.
good. I appreciate that.
You were prepared, so that's good.
Oh yeah, I wanted to be sure that I did my research and prepared for this. Cause I mean, I didn't just want to be like, ask you one question and be like, all right, go away then. No, I wanted to like, you know, actually
Yeah,
like discuss your other projects and stuff.
cool. Right on.
All
All right,
right,
man. Well, thank you for this, and just message me if you have any other questions or whatnot.
yeah, maybe we could do another one of these again in the future. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we're connected. So yeah, just ask. We'll figure something out.
All right, thank you, Freddie, for this, and I hope you have a nice day.
Oh, you too. Thanks. Take it easy.
Good luck on your work.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.